as many mistakes as this nation has made, and we've made many, for whatever reason, and I think it's the Christian worldview, the United States never gave itself permission to try to conquer the whole world.
The one thing that I really liked that Trump said was that he talked about leading with peace. He would like to be known for leading an era of peace through strength. And I hope that he's leading with sincerity, but I do think the next 4 years will be better than the last 4.
The immigrants, like myself, we actually know who's being allowed across now. The very people we left because of, we're now letting into this country.
You were listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus. I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We had a very big day yesterday.
The world shifted.
The world shifted.
We now have the presidency of Donald Trump once again.
The 75th?
75th? 47th. And you're living way in the future.
I don't know why I said that. He was the 45th and the 47th.
Yes.
That's what I inverted.
Yeah. And with a dash in between of no president.
Okay.
No, I'm just
kidding. This is the public episode, not the private episode.
No, that's not a statement against Biden as an individual. I just feel that we've been sort of absent of a strong presence. Obama was a strong presence. Clinton was a strong presence. Bush was a strong presence. You're usually clearly affected by whoever's sitting in the White House. And it felt like at least the last few years of the Biden presidency, it felt like there was a vacancy in the offense.
There's a few things we have to get into, but before we get into them, I don't know if there's any more clickbait than you talking about the last 4 years and the regime change. But before we dive in, there's a couple things we want to invite you to. If you're a part of the Mindshift podcast community, if you're out there and you're listening to Mindshift, we want to invite you to become a part of the Mindshift community. Essentially what that is, we create an account on School, which is similar to our Arena community, but it's just for podcast listeners. It's $25 a month. You can join right now by going to school.com/mindshiftpodcast. Or we have a new website called mindshiftpod.com. And you can look at episodes. You can sign up to our newsletter. You can also join the community from there. We have like 170,000 people on our. No, I think we have 120 something people that have already joined. Tonight is the first night because we're recording this on Tuesdays. So tonight is the first night that we're recording our community call, which is just a live Q&A with our community members where we're asking Q&As, and we're going to hopefully have a community-driven episode for next week. I don't know when we're going to release it or how we're going to release it, but we release private episodes. You get exclusive access to merch, and you get full access to us, which is kind of cool.
So if you're listening to this podcast right now, which I assume you are listening to it because you're hearing me right now, you missed the first Mindshift community event.
Yes.
So don't miss the next one. Go sign up, join the Mindshift community. It's only $25 a month. It's a great way of connecting. Once a month, we're going to be doing these live conversations with Q&A. We're going to have some special merch drops for everyone in our community and some other kinds of beautiful experiences that will be
What are you saying? Don't be vague. Just say it.
We're going to be doing things for our community along the way that is going to be special.
I'm already in there. I'm like responding to people every day.
Awesome.
I've been on, which has been pretty cool. And so like the School app, which is really cool, a guy named Sam Ovens created it. We use it for the Arena.
Sure.
A lot of our friends use it for their communities.
Yeah.
But we wanted to create a community for Mindshift specifically because one, there's so many things that we want to say, but maybe shouldn't live on the internet in its fullest form.
Yeah.
So we create these exclusive episodes on there, which is like the back half of an app if we decide to go another 5-10 minutes. Like today, we know we're going to talk about all the things that shouldn't have happened during the inauguration, like Elon Musk doing that weird gesture.
Right. And I'm gonna add this. We're gonna have private episodes.
Okay.
One of the constant feedbacks I get is, you're a pastor, you shouldn't be talking about these issues. In our private episodes, I'm not the pastor. I'm just Erwin, and I'm gonna speak my mind.
Okay.
And if you want to hear what I have to think or have to say about really specific things, join the Mindshift community.
Okay, so if you're to put that metaphorically,
it's
you're taking off the Batman mask, and now you're just Bruce Wayne, and I'm still Alfred. Okay, so back to this episode, and let's jump right in. The inaugurate what?
You went to Elon Musk,
but we're gonna end with Elon Musk because the question at hand is: Elon Musk a neo-Nazi?
Because that's what saw right away.
I even feel bad saying that or asking that question because one, if you're listening to this or if you're ever listening to this or if an AI version of your brain, Elon Musk, is listening to this, I like you, I want to be friends, and I would love to work together at some point, and I would love to have you on the podcast.
But I want to say, I happen to go on someone's story who's a really wonderful friend, and I love this person, and he posted the meme of Elon Musk looking like he's making the Nazi salute, and it caught me off guard. I had not seen it.
We were sitting next to each other watching the championship game.
National championship, yeah. And so when I saw that, because of who it was, I took it really seriously because he's a really good friend and I really love this guy. But then what I did is I immediately went and started researching Elon's family because I think the meme said something about you can't get the South African apartheid out of your system, with Nazism, whatever. And
racism.
I've been in South Africa, and I do know that there is significant racism and among many of the Afrikaners who are there, and that's taken generations for that to work through. And so so that made me really
that's not
nervous.
Surprising. There's racism everywhere,
right? But
in white communities and black communities,
but there are places
Asian
in the world
communities,
where apartheid and racism and even neo-Nazi movements have been more significant. So I went and one of the things I saw right away was that Elon Musk's father actually was a representative for the anti-apartheid movement politically. And so I thought, okay, right away, Elon's background is anti-apartheid. It's not a Nazi, apartheid, racist kind of background. And then as I looked at the whole, I realized, he's not trying to mimic a Nazi, salute. He's just Elon Musk. He's awkward, and I think that everyone knows he's physically peculiar, and I think actually he was trying to say, "My heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to you," but I do think it's one of the ways.
See, the way you did it right there, that's the right way you do that. I think it's the hard. I'm not even gonna do it, but it's the hard salute. And then in the comments everywhere, it's like, that's the Roman salute. It's the Roman salute. It's been adopted or, adapted by the neo-Nazis or the Nazis in the 1930s, right? But the reality is,
when someone's that physically awkward as Elon Musk is, you just don't want to attribute too much to that. And I don't think Elon Musk has in any way demonstrated a racist ideology or spirit. And I think it's it's not a good beginning to go, we're going to be looking for these kinds of slices of action to try to depict a person's ideology and ethics and who they are. You cannot get past the kind of conflict and vitriol and cultural violence that we have if you don't try to stop misrepresenting and misunderstanding people.
This is a hot take, and this is a take I will stand by, but I'm not proud of standing by this take. I've been in rooms, right? I'm a white guy by perception, but what most people don't realize is I'm probably the most mutt in the room.
Or you're half Latino, whether you
no, but I'm saying that I'm half Latin and half from Irish, the white side of Europe, and so I obviously understand the perception and the perceived advantage by some people. But I have been in rooms with really well-known and famous black producers and musicians and coaches and have been treated lesser than people that I've brought into the room who work for me to help shoot something or capture something because they were more obviously ethnically diverse. Yeah. And I know it was because I wasn't black. And so that so there is that unique thing because I'm like, dude, I think just racism happens everywhere, and people just feel more comfortable with people who look like each other. I mean, we know that, right? So I'm not. What Elon Musk did was not great because you can't get. That's like that's like using the N-word with like a hard R or an A. Like they would say that, like in culture, be like you can't use a hard R. As people who are perceived as lighter skinned, we can never use that word. That is a word we just cannot use.
Right.
But the direct from the heart to the chest to the sky. There needs to be he needs to wave that arm before he gets to, Barron Trump did it well. Just like a little like this. Yeah. We don't need to go any,
There needs to be this sort of angle
the
thing.
The trajectory of the arm cannot go from the 90-degree angle to the extended 100. It just shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Let's just face it. Nazis ruined that.
Yes.
Well, whatever it may have meant before, you just don't use any motion that looks similar to that motion.
That can't make a comeback until a very, very famous Jewish man or woman decides to do that one. Yeah. Until then, it just, we're making light of like obviously like an intense conversation. But the reason why I tell that story, because I'm like, I think everyone in modern day, if you live in like a major city, you've experienced some kind of reverse racism or racism. And so racism is real, and it is like prevalent in culture, and I think we have to be more aware of that, right? And understand, like Elon is like kind of an awkward dude physically, and I think he's a genius. I'm a big fan of his cars. I like SpaceX. I think the Boring Company's incredible. I think the Boring Company's incredible. I like Doge. I like what he's about, and he has 17 million baby mamas, but he has like 10 baby mamas.
12. I think he has like 12 babies.
Right? Yeah. No,
12 children.
Yeah, but with like 5 different people.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. He's on a journey. But that journey of the arm he needs to wave that.
Yeah. What I would say is that if I believed Elon Musk
was actually
used those gestures to affirm racism, Nazism, apartheid, I would condemn him instantly.
Would you?
Absolutely.
Okay. No. I know that you would privately. I'm saying, would you publicly come out and say that? I know that you would condemn that behavior no matter what.
Yeah. No, if you're coming out neo-Nazi or anything like that,
no, I'm not about that.
I'm going to use this podcast to condemn you, and I don't have any tolerance for that.
Yeah.
I just think that he's being misrepresented
or mislabeled.
Yeah, and I just think it's just his own awkwardness, and it was the furthest thing from his mind or his heart. And I do think we need to look at people's intention rather than their accidental gestures because they're awkward.
How do you feel about, you called it a regime change, jokingly, but how do you feel about a new president? How do you feel about the inauguration? We can hit some of the points that Trump laid out in his executive order mapping. I know that me and you, we hung out part of the day. I called you in the morning. I FaceTimed you because something had happened, and I was asking if like you had watched it or if it was just me. But how do you want to go about it? Because we're 12 minutes in. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the inauguration.
We have to talk about it. And well, first of all, what an awkward moment. Donald Trump's speech was basically like setting Rome on fire. He basically sets everyone sitting behind him on fire, and especially Biden and Obama, but almost like all the presidents before him. And I'm sitting there listening to this going, oh, this is brutal. He is saying ruthless things to the people sitting right behind him, and they have to sit there and take it. But then my brain also flips and goes, Biden's last speech as president of the United States, he basically tells us that Trump is an oligarch, that he's bringing all these wealthy tyrants to come in and control government. And his closing speech was as ruthless and condemning as presidentially possible. So it's almost like this is how you wanted the conversation to go. And you can't expect then Trump, because he's not the better man in terms of he doesn't choose the higher path. I mean, he can be pretty petty, and and there's no question that if you attack him, he's going to attack back. And there are several points along the way where, I had my cringe moments going, you didn't need to say that.
Which moments?
When he would just name people that he was getting rid of or that were, as enemies or whatever it was. I can't remember all the details now, but there were definitely those moments.
He didn't say in the inaugural speech, did he?
He did. He named some people along the way.
Well, just each speech kept, because he did like 7 or 8 speeches that day, right?
Yeah, and so, the ones he was more freelancing, they were a little more dangerous.
Yeah, freestyling.
Freestyling. Okay,
freestyling. He's definitely not freelancing.
No,
Joe Biden's now a freelancer. He said some things. Mm-hmm. How do you want to break them down? Let's go piece by piece.
Well, I don't know if I can.
The Gulf of Mexico. What do you think about Trump's renaming the Gulf of Mexico?
I don't think there is a Gulf of Mexico. I think there's a Gulf of America.
And there's my point, everybody. There you go. That's it. The goal, how the West has won. And what is it? How the West was won?
Yeah.
Well, I got to really learn these.
I'm always wondering who named this stuff anyway, and who gets the rename. And
it is really interesting, right? Like
it is.
He's just going.
He's just going at it. Mount McKinley, Gulf of America.
Did he change Mount McKinley?
He changed it back because
what was it?
It was Mount McKinley after the president.
I know, but what was it after?
I guess it was named after an indigenous people in Alaska, which I have no problem with at all. So I think it's great, and I also don't have a problem with being called Mount McKinley. And I probably would have more bigger questions of, are you dealing with a larger framework of, we need to erase our history?
I don't even want to go there.
Okay.
What do you? I want to go there, but I don't want to go there yet. I want you to answer this question.
Okay.
How do you feel about Trump renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America?
My first thought, it feels silly because it's not going to solve a major problem in the world.
Good thing I like silly.
I'm like, what problem are you solving? I want a president who solves problems, but I also understand that he's basically exuding a pride in America and saying, if we're the people protecting that water, why isn't the Gulf of America, not the Gulf of Mexico? I actually don't know enough history to know why it's called the Gulf of Mexico.
I like the new name. I like it. I like the new name, the Gulf of America. You know why?
Why?
Because I like America. I like Mexico too.
Well, I feel like at least we kept the word Gulf.
I'm honestly surprised he didn't change it to the Gulf. Gulf of America.
Change the U to an O.
It's a U to an
O. At least it didn't change it to the Gulf of Trump.
I think it has to do with drilling, right? And its ability to do drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, and we had signed some deals. But I don't really know. So we'll dive into some of the things. But I just want the hot takes. So second, Mount McKinley was called Mount Denali. It was called Mount McKinley, then Mount Denali. Now it's Mount McKinley.
Yeah. How
do you feel about this? Like we've changed names. Mm-hmm. Now we're changing things back. Mm-hmm. And then with the Gulf of Mexico, we're changing it to something new. So and then Trump talks about taking back the Panama Canal. We built it. We gave it away, and now he's saying we're going to go and take it back because basically China owns it now. How do you feel about things like that? And how do you feel about him bringing it into that inauguration speak?
Well, I think he uses an immense amount of hyperbole. I think it would be hard to factually back up that the Chinese are controlling the Panama Canal. And and so I think that requires a lot of research to really determine whether that's accurate. I think Panama is controlling the Panama Canal. And if Panama owns the Panama Canal, do they have the right to sell it to China? Do they have the right to allow China to be invested in it? And technically, from an international perspective, the answer is yes. If you give something, I think it was Jimmy Carter who gave the Panama Canal to Panama. You can't give something to someone and say, oh, but you're not allowed to do this and that, unless you did it when you gave it to them.
Well, if you look at our track record,
yeah,
we love
taking things back,
to give things and then take it back.
Yeah. So if I actually thought as a citizen that China was infringing on our safety and security through accessing Central America through Panama, then I would be very, very concerned. And I just don't have enough research to know for certain. But I do think what Trump is saying is we're not going to play by the same rules where everyone gets to take advantage of the United States and we don't respond to it. And I
think a lot of people don't realize that, right? I think the nuance here is actually in the language and in the reality that over the last 3 or 4 presidents, predominantly the Democrat presidents, have given a lot back to the world. And I think there's a good thing in that, because I don't think that we need to operate the U.S. as the global state, but in some degree we do, right? Like we're the ones who fund the UN, we're the ones who fund NATO, we're the ones who do a lot of these things with the promise that people will invest and give back, but then we end up taking and covering most of the bill. It's like a Panama Canal. We developed it, we produced it, we ended up giving it back. However many decades later, now we realize that it's kind of been usurped by another potential big leadership. And because China is heavily investing into Africa, into Central and South America.
Very much.
Right?
Yeah.
They're smart. They're really smart.
Yeah.
Right? They invested in the U.S. Like, they're really smart business people and leaders. You know, like, and I think we also now maybe have a leader who is smart enough to go, I see what you're doing. Right? And so the nuance here, I think, is our presidents have given a lot of way. Right? We had a really bad North American trade agreement NAFTA was really, really bad. And he pulled us out in his first term, right? And so I do think we have the tendency as Americans or the American politicians to give a lot away because it feels good. It makes them look heroic in the moment, but actually sets up the U.S. to be in a bad place. Like, our economy is not great. It's being held up by the stimulus checks during COVID, a lot of threatening of Chinese taxes and tariffs globally. And so we're in this unique space as Americans where how do we become, without being these neo-nationalists, how do we actually go, we're voting for a president for our country, not for the world.
Yeah.
And then how do we make that a priority? Understanding that it affects the world.
I do think that's actually one of the psychological shifts. I genuinely believe that President Barack Obama wanted to be the world's president and really took a sense of perspective of, I want to make decisions in a sense that are good for the whole world,
right?
Even if it's bad for the United States. And I think Trump as a nationalist is, I'm going to make decisions that are good for the United States and believe that a strong United States is good for the world. It's just it's a different perspective of how you navigate global relationships. And
how do you feel about it personally? Do you feel comfortable sharing that, or
yeah,
right now we're just commenting on everything?
I'm a person who sees a bit of both, and I do think that one of the things I did like about Barack Obama was that he was trying to be a president who was aware and involved in the world's welfare. But I actually do believe that a weak America is the most dangerous thing for this planet. That a strong America is actually what keeps Russia and China and North Korea and other elements at bay. And when America is stronger, the world is actually safer. And I think that's a tricky thing, because if you do not believe America is inherently a good nation, then you want to bring the destruction of the nation. You want to minimize its strength. But I'm telling you, the nations that we respect and admire, whether it's Switzerland or New Zealand, the nations that seem to be the more peaceful nations, those nations would be at risk of their freedom if the United States did not have the strength that it has in its posture around the world. There has never been in human history a nation that was more powerful than all the nations in the world combined, and that is the United States. It has been the United States. And when a nation has that much power, it has never had enough self-restraint to stop from trying to take over the whole world. As many mistakes as this nation has made, and we've made many, and as many times historically we've made the wrong ethical choice, for whatever reason, and I think it's the Christian worldview, the United States never gave itself permission to try to conquer the whole world. The United States could have conquered Mexico, Central America, and South America all within a year. And if that framework existed in this nation, that same nationalistic manifest destiny, and what holds Russia back or China back is the implications of their military advancement. And what held America back for many, many decades was actually an internal ethics that told us that we should not do that it's not right. And so I don't think people really give the United States enough credit for the global restraint it has had on a political and military level.
The one thing that I really liked that Trump said was that he talked about leading with peace, and this being an era of peace, and that he would like to be known for leading an era of peace through strength. That if a strong America will bring a peaceful world. And I truly do believe that. But I also like that he said it out loud. We have a lot of clips from the guy talking about unique situations with very with rhetoric that I don't appreciate. So I do like that whoever's on his team, whoever's getting him these sound bites, it's really healthy and really strong. Who knows what will actually happen? And I hope that he's leading with sincerity and speaking with sincerity. Mm-hmm. But I do think the next 4 years will be better than the last 4.
Yeah, what's to me, I think is also interesting to note is, President Biden, one, he was so active last month that it just amazed me that he wasn't that active for the last 2 or 3 years. But in the last month, he was really active. Over 4,000 pardons. I think he has more pardons than all the presidents in history combined. And I think if you do the math, I think that will prove to be true. And so when you say that, Trump is a president that doesn't care about the law and the judicial system and will find a way to override all the basic, limits of the legal system, that is what President Biden did. And when he creates preemptive pardons for his family, which has never been done in American history, and he actually in the past has said that should not be done, it's not legal, and that would invalidate our trust in the courts. And then he did it. And then when he makes a statement that Trump is bringing an oligarchy with all these billionaires, I mean, it was President Biden who gave an award to George Soros, who is probably one of the most nefarious billionaires in the world. And
you look at George Soros's political seeding and his influence on the district attorneys, the DAs in small A, B, and C cities. Mm-hmm. It's so evil. He's controlling. He has a large influence mm-hmm. in police systems, in police forces around the country. In these like B, C cities, towns the whole catch and release thing, those policies are brought to you by George Soros's influence and those candidates.
I don't understand his motivation.
It doesn't make sense, but maybe it's a control thing. I don't know.
I don't know, but what I can see clearly is that this is like brilliantly political gaslighting, that everything they accuse Trump and the Republicans of doing, they actually did. And they did it effectively.
They didn't win.
No, well, up to now.
Yeah.
I actually think what had happened is the gaslighting stopped working, and people realized, wait a minute, you're saying they're going to do this while you're doing this. So if we should be afraid of this, the end of democracy, then we need to be afraid of what you actually are doing. And that, to me, is one of the reasons Trump won, is that Trump was being accused of wanting to do everything the Democratic Party was actually doing. And so they made people aware of this is the potential danger. And then all of a sudden people were looking going, oh, and you're already doing it. I actually think the Democratic narrative is what brought the Democratic Party down in this election. Now we'll get to see if Trump really is going to do all the things they said he would do, or whether they were gaslighting him completely because they were doing it and they were afraid that he would undo it.
Okay. What do you think about Joe Biden pardoning his family right before the inaugural speech?
I wasn't surprised. I knew he was going to do it.
Did you think he would pardon Fauci and all the other guys, Adam Schiff?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Go. Do it. Talk about it.
Because I am absolutely convinced he knows they did things that were not in alignment with the law. I think Biden knows that Fauci lied about the origins of COVID. I think he knows that Fauci was financially interwound with the organizations that funded those experimental studies and research. And I actually think he knows. And so he has to pardon Fauci so that investigations don't go deep. I think he has to pardon his family. And frankly, I think, regardless of what people say, I think most fathers would. And because whatever his sons or family are guilty of, he would be guilty too. And so the best way to stop an investigation into yourself is to stop the investigation to everyone around you by pardoning everyone around you. What I think should be done is that I do think Fauci should be investigated, and I do think that the Hunan or the
Wuhan
virus and laboratories should be investigated regardless of whether anyone can be convicted.
What is really wild is that if you're watching the media in a major city, like at least LA, right? I only have our local news and then CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, right? So those ones everyone's seeing. But our local news immediately connected it to Wuhan.
Instantly.
Like within like the first few days, it was this virus is believed to have come from Wuhan. Then there was some bat thing. Then there was some festival thing that's outside the lab. And then you realize, oh, Fauci's actually invested. Oh, these people are actually invested in this
there's
lab.
A laboratory right there.
Why are American politicians allowed to invest in experimental laboratories and offshore in other countries and countries that we have unique relationships with, right? Yeah. I find that incredibly nefarious.
And
I find it. Yeah. Sorry, go.
No. And adding to what you're saying, and how is it possible that our government can fund in China experiments that are outlawed in the United States?
It's unethical. It's immoral, and it should be illegal. And but going back to the pardoning. Why pardon people who didn't do anything wrong?
Well, I've been trying to look at some of the literature on this, and it seems that you can't accept a pardon without admission of guilt. So if you give the pardon, it is supposed to be specific. But if you accept the pardon, it is an admission of guilt. And so that it should be interesting to see if Fauci's innocent. See, if I'm innocent, and you want to investigate me, I'm not going to take the pardon because I want you to look like a fool when you investigate me and find out I did nothing wrong.
Yeah, or hey, I don't need the pardon. I'm actually going to thank you. It's thank you for thinking of me, but no thank you. Hey, President Trump, I'm available if you want to call and look through everything. I'll help you and assist and audit. Yeah, right? That's the way you know you live guilt-free.
Yeah, not only do I not need protection, but I will help you investigate.
Yeah.
Because I know where all the bodies are buried. I was there from the beginning. I will help you because I'm not guilty. Someone's guilty.
But not me. But the narrative was really unique during COVID because it was, okay, this came from a lab in China.
Yeah.
Then it was, if you say that, you're a racist.
Absolutely.
And then 3 years later it was, oh, by the way, we realized that it originated out of this lab in China.
And what's that?
So did we get gaslit by our own government and media?
Absolutely.
So who owns the media? Where's the money coming from?
Is that oligarchy? But the media was the oligarchy that controlled the American narrative.
Yeah. So that's the unique part about President Sleepy Joe Biden. It was that I'm sorry, I had to do one. President Biden, who didn't mind bringing up the oligarchy, which I find really unique. But what we don't realize, and I think this is like the frog cooking in the hot water, is that we, as the Americans, we are this frog, this metaphorical frog. We actually live inside the vessel of the oligarchy, right? The people who own the media are the oligarchy. I think Succession made us so much more aware that there are families with terrible children, with no ethics or moral or human understanding or care, are running and leading how we communicate and understand the media and our news. That shouldn't be allowed. To me at least, and I'm not a big fan of nonprofits. Like I just go make a profit, then give it away. But I do think the media to some degree should be a nonprofit. It should not have something to gain or an agenda to drive or a narrative to dispose of, right? There shouldn't be this political playbook that is happening where you have to go from CNN to Fox News to MSNBC. Like MSNBC sounded so depressed yesterday. It was actually really fun to watch. But CNN, it was like, we hate them, we hate them, we hate them. Or not we hate them, but it's just poking every hole. I thought Wolf Blitzer was actually pretty fair, and I really enjoy him. And then Fox News, there's nothing more tacky than watching a Republican celebrate their own win. What is that woman's name? I cannot stand her. And it's not Rachel Maddow.
I can't remember who it is.
You know what I'm talking about.
I don't watch Fox enough to know the names
She
of the
kept
people
interrupting the people she was interviewing so that the camera would go back on her. And
they're just so happy.
They're so happy.
They're just smiling from ear to ear.
But here,
they're giddy.
This is my advice to the people who own the media. Watch the Hunger Games. Watch the Hunger Games. And if any of your news correspondents reflect any of the characteristics of District 1, of whatever her name is, who is awesome, who played that amazing news reporter, anchor, host, And if there's any correlation or crossover, fire them immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go find people like a Joe Rogan or I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of like on the other side, Skinny Confidential podcast. Like, there's so many podcasters now, this new media world reality, that have massive audiences who speak their opinions, who learn new things, who make mistakes, who make errors, who come back on and go, oh, I said the wrong thing last week. Let me fix it. There's like humility, no ego. But for the drive of actually getting truth out there, there should be massive penalties against gaslighting and manipulating the audience that listens to your news media. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, there's a difference between getting facts wrong. Human beings will always get some facts wrong.
Yeah.
Than manipulating facts with purpose and intention. And I think that's where we're really at. And that's what the American people are tired of. Like, I'm good if you are a social commentator on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, whatever, and your show is about your opinion. That's great. If people want to hear your opinion, more power to you. But there has to be some places where the news actually is a reporting of what's going on, rather than all the spin that's happening underneath the veil. And I look back and it's all about what you focus on. Like, you could be telling the truth, but only focus on Elon Musk. Now that one doesn't work for me because it's not true. He's not a Nazi. But let's say you take Trump's statement about immigration or whatever it is, and you really are against that position. But then you're not talking about all the other aspects of it. You can control media by what you talk about, what you focus on. It's just like with immigration. I'm an immigrant. My mom's an immigrant. I mean, my entire family from El Salvador who live in the United States are all immigrants, and every one of them is against illegal immigration. I don't even know a Latino who's here legally, or
you don't know a Latino that's here legally
that is for illegal immigration.
Oh, every friend of, so I grew up in California, and it is really unique, right? Like, when we went to Mexico City for the first time, I didn't understand that there were white Mexicans. They were light-skinned Mexicans. Because they're just as unique and diverse as any other.
There are people in Mexico way whiter than you,
and way darker than people in Africa. Like, there's just they have the full spectrum, right? And so I think I find it to be really unique, right? Because my exposure of Mexicans was people who immigrated mostly illegally to California, and I grew up with a lot of their kids who were legal. And so we have these conversations. Almost every one of those families that came across illegal hate illegal immigration. And the couple I'm talking, like, the mom came across twice. Now they're massive business owners. They employ hundreds of people, and they are I would guess more than 50% of their workforce is probably illegal. But they hate illegal immigration.
And here's a subtle difference. 40 years ago, when you were immigrating illegally, you were coming here for a better life.
Okay.
So I would say overwhelmingly, these were just good, people of the earth, risking their lives to come here for a new beginning. Over the last 30 years, our borders have been so out of control that the worst of humanity is coming here. And countries are just dropping their criminals. And
we know that Mexico, one, has a narco influence that is destroying and decaying that government and society. But they're shipping Guatemalans, Honduras, and Salvadorians from the southern border up, literally shipping, like putting on trains, putting in buses, putting on flights, flying them up to the northern border of Mexico and the southern border of the United States, and then helping them get across the border. Because that is to me what the problem is, right?
Yeah, and there's human trafficking, and see, it's
massive human trafficking. Almost all of it is human trafficking, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Human trafficking, drugs. And you have terrorists coming through, and you also have really you have the opioid scandals, you have the fentanyl scandals. Massive. MS-13, your people.
18th Street. And so what people don't realize is the immigrants, like myself, we actually know who's being allowed across now, which is why I talked to my mom.
What do you mean by that?
We know that a huge number of the people being allowed to cross the border are going to destroy this country.
How so? People would have a problem with that statement.
No, because when you have countries dropping your
15
ex-cons,
million
your
immigrants
prisoners,
came across
your
the border.
your gangbangers, the very people we left because of, we're now letting into this country.
So you're saying this from an immigrant's perspective?
Yes, from an immigrant's perspective, going, that's who we left. That's who was ruining our country.
You're not giving much background, because what you ended up happening is your mom came to the U.S. first and trained for her role, and then the moment she had her job officially, she brought you guys over more and more. Mm-hmm. But you guys had to leave and stay in the U.S. with your mom because of wars that were breaking out consistently.
Right, in El Salvador, yeah.
Yes.
And the violence in El Salvador has been horrific throughout my entire lifetime.
And then the United States had the largest population of the gang MS-13. It was actually organized in 45 plus states across the country. People don't realize that. It was more intricately designed and organized than the Hells Angels. And then largest presence in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. They knew that they weren't the Crips or the Bloods. They knew it was MS-13 because when police would walk into the house, I've read these reports when there was a massive bust in the early 2000s. They knew that it was MS-13 because the bodies weren't shot up. They were chopped up because MS-13 used machetes, because machetes is the daily blue collar work tool that everybody uses. So that was their signature killing method. Mm-hmm. And so when you immigrate, and then you have the largest gang in the entire world, it really is like a terrorist faction living in this, immigrating and getting kicked out of their countries into the country you left for safety. Mm-hmm. It causes a unique shift in the equilibrium, right? Yeah.
And it's also what's happening from Venezuela as well. And I'm just trying to help people understand why so many immigrants are against illegal immigration. It's because what drove them out of the countries, what destroyed our countries, we're now opening our borders and saying, come on in. And we're acting as if it's an act of nobility, but it's actually an act of irresponsibility. And we are going to end up like those countries if we don't actually rethink our policies. I don't know anyone who's against immigration. I know endless people who are against illegal, undocumented immigration.
Let's time out.
Yeah.
Wait, say the last.
Pure open borders. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. And maybe that's what our bonus episode should talk about, is pure open borders, and then go deeper into, is Elon Musk a neo-Nazi, and what is happening with the new USA and its new oligarchy family. Mm-hmm. But we'll dive into that in the private episode that we're going to have in the community, and you guys can join the community by going to mindshiftpod.com and join the community. All right. See you guys next week. Rate and review this podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube. We will see you guys next week.